for me to be able to talk about something we don't hear in the fish clubs very often, and that is the history of women in the aquarium hobby. And if you think back, there's not that many women that we remember. And so what I'm trying to do here is remember some of our foremothers who got us to where we are today. And then I'm going to end with some more recent women in the hobby. But overall, this is just a brief review of women in the United States hobby. Granted, there's some fabulous women that in other countries that I didn't touch on yet. There's so much, I should write a book, because I just barely scratched the surface, and it's a rabbit hole that you can go down, and I read all kinds of club bulletins, and I would like to, at this point, thank the guys who helped me prepare this, and that would be Albert Klee, who we know is an aquarium literature collector, and Robert Ellerman in California was really good with a lot of these old newsletters that I used to research, and Mark Denaro. I start with a few of his slides, which are way fancier and better than mine. I'm like taking pictures of fish magazines, and his are all nice and fancy. You'll be able to tell the difference. But I just wanted to make clear that this is just a partial and very brief overview. Lord knows I left out so many important women, but we couldn't really do them all. But I just picked a few representative women that I felt connected to, and I think that after I tell you what all they've done for this hobby, that you'll have a greater respect for women in the hobby historically. Okay, I don't know what I'm doing too much on this computer, so let's see how it goes. Okay, this is my fish store. I know how to get a fish guy's attention, obviously. My store was called Amazonia Aquariums. It was in Austin, Texas from 92 to 2012. 5,000 square feet, about 470 tanks, about 80% cichlids. No salt water. Screw those people. No, not really. It was a cichlid store, and I wanted to sell what I loved, and I love cichlids. And Austin has the perfect water for cichlids, hard and alkaline. And I don't like those discus people either. No, not really. Discus people are cool. But it's hard to do discus in Austin. You know, the water is so hard and alkaline. So, live nude fish, the story behind this sign is, I was located on the interstate, and there was a string of massage parlors next to me, and they had signs like live nude girls. And I'd see their parking lots filling up, and I'm just like sitting there looking, where is everybody? So I made live nude fish and put it on the freeway, and of course it got a lot of attention. But what really set it over the edge was somebody stole my sign. And brilliant marketing person that I am, I promptly wrote a press release and sent it to all the local media, and they put it on the news. And I got so much free publicity off of that stolen sign that I was on the evening news on all the channels. And so I just want you to know what kind of sick person you're dealing with up here. I like to have a lot of fun with my hobby, and that was kind of symbolic of our whole store when we thought of that idea. Okay, well, I'm going to start you out with the fish picture, because there's not too many in this talk. It's mainly about people with a few gratuitous fish pictures thrown in. But I just wanted to start with this one because it's something weird and cool, and you never see it. And this is a goby from Sumatra, India. And it's from coastal streams, lives above waterfalls. And so, this is the sort of fish that I never saw when I was running a fish store, but I just thought it was a cool fish and a cool picture. Nothing to do with anything else in the talk. I just like the picture and the fish. Okay, these are the first few slides that are really nice. Were made by Mark Denaro for his talk about the history of the aquarium hobby, and he pulled out the slides about women for me. And this is the woman that Stenopoma kingsley was named after, if you're familiar with that fish. And she was quite the character. She made 2 solo trips to West Africa, and she had all kinds of resources, i.e. money, and her family was wealthy, but the men didn't want to do what she wanted to do, so she just took off and did it anyway. And she wore her English clothes, traveling around Africa, and she was the first European to visit much of the great forest in Africa. And she survived numerous encounters with animals and cannibals. And she opposed the system of English imperialism, and she nursed English soldiers, and she's buried at sea with full military honors. Obviously, she's way before our time, and she's not American, but since Mark so nicely gave me the slide, I just wanted to throw her in there. It seems very interesting, and I'd like to research the people in that century more. I tended to concentrate in the 20th century. Okay, this woman here, she did a whole lot of work with her husband, and they collected fish all over, but they mainly did South America, and she was one of the very first people to propose the land bridge or pass connection between Africa and South America, because she saw it in the evolution of the fish. And so in this instance, this was a married couple. She was a ichthyologist, but he had the credit and the name, and she was just kind of left in the dustbin. This is her husband, and you know, he's more famous. His first paper was on darters, and they were both ichthyologists, and they studied under Agassiz at Harvard. And I just find it fascinating, the people that were into fish so long ago when you couldn't hardly keep them alive in an aquarium. And of course, this is not an American either, but we can't talk about women fish people without talking about Travasse, I guess. And so she was a mentor to Ad Konings. And we all know the fish named after her, the African cichlids. And she's very important to the hobby. And she died in 1993, so she's, you know, practiced a lot in the last century. And she has described 6 species of Mbuna and 27 different types of haplochromines. And I just find it fascinating, the women in the history like her, that I think we need to recognize them a little bit more. Now this is where I really start my talk. This is a woman that got me to this topic. I don't know if any of y'all know who she is, but her name is Ida Mellon. And Ida Mellon is quite an influential and important fish person. She is my personal heroine in the fish world. I really admire her. She was born in 1877. She died in 1970. She went to high school 1893. 1900, she went to business college. She was a law reporter from 1901 to 1916. And she, starting in 1908 to 1910, she was a student at the Woods Hole Marine Biology Lab. And she was one of the very first women to go there. And I found pictures of her like collecting fish, but with the clothes of the time, you know. The women were forced to be covered head to toe with elaborate dresses and pantaloons and everything. And she didn't let that stop her, and she was out collecting fish. So at age 41, she started working for the New York Public Aquarium, and that is what this is. She worked there from 1916 to 1929, and she became very influential, and in fact, some have argued that she was actually the driving force behind the aquarium at that time, and she really caught the public's attention by having radio shows about fish, and she talked about fish to the public, and she went out of her way to connect with the public and try to draw the public into tropical fish. And that went on 1916 to 1929. 1929, she was kind of drummed out by the men. She had too much power and influence, and the people liked her better, and the guys just ran her out of there. Even though she was running the show and had most of the knowledge and power, as far as connecting with the people, but she was forced out of her career because she was too good at it. And in 1929, she went on tour to Europe to study public aquariums all through Europe. And in 1930, she became a published author, and we'll get to this, but she wrote a whole lot of fish books. And this is her playing with her plants. Now, I'm going to read something she wrote, and this is usually not what you hear in a fish talk, but I just found it fascinating, the parallels as a woman in the tropical fish industry, and this woman trying to make into the tropical fish industry in the 1920s, the challenges that she faced as a woman. So this is her words. I'm 47 years old and poor, headed for the poorhouse as far as I can see. I cannot make a living wage. I'm called a successful woman. What irony. The New York standard of a successful person is one who can make the world pay him his price. The best I've been able to do is get my employers to agree to pay me half of what I'm worth and half of what all the men were making there, and then repudiate the amount. I'm 47 and I have the ability to write. I have been called the best educated woman in the United States. I have energy, ambition, personality, and I'm told charm. Yet I cannot make a living wage. While others' incomes have tripled to meet the tripled cost of commodities, mine has barely doubled. My salary has increased by not quite 100%, while my rent has increased nearly 200%. Am I stultifying my powers, warping my gifts like a Chinese woman's foot in a vice? And if you think, this is 100 years ago, and this woman is voicing the concerns that we have today. We have inflation, you can't make a living in the fish business lots of time. Not to put too fine a point on it, but especially if you're a woman. Like, I couldn't get bank loans. I started in 1992. It was on a string and a prayer. I borrowed $10,000 from my parents and made it happen, but there was no bank going to give me a loan for opening a store. So I just found a lot of interest in her life. So a little bit about her that kind of concludes it. In 1916, a 41-year-old woman with little scientific education became the secretary of the New York Aquarium. Working her way up, she became the first female officer and realized her lifelong dream of pursuing a career in biological sciences, and broke with limitations and low expectations surrounding her sex and her class background. 1930, she left to pursue a career in popular hobby writing, becoming the foremost expert on aquarium fish and also domestic cats in the United States. So I have a few more pictures of her, and this is her at the public aquarium feeding a walking catfish. And she loved the public spectacle and getting the attention of the children, and she was really good with that part of her job. And this is some tanks of hers at the public aquarium. And then kind of her breakout article, 1931, National Geographic. She wrote what was probably, I believe, the first article about tropical fish in the National Geographic. And she called them toy fish. And that's just the word that she was using. And these are some illustrations from that magazine article. And I find them quite beautiful. I'm sorry I'm not very good at photography or presenting them properly, but you can get a hint of the color, and the pictures are just so nice in her article. And if you ever find this magazine, you should definitely invest it. It's a collector's item. And you can see why these pictures probably attracted a lot of new people to be interested in tropical fish. And they're obviously drawings, not photographs. But she covers a wide variety of species here with scats and harlequin rasboras, and it's just really interesting. So that's Ida Mellon, and she's the first one we're going to start with. Now this next lady, I personally, out of all of them, find her one of the most fascinating ones, and here's why. Number one, she's a black woman in the aquarium hobby. You don't see that. You didn't see it back then especially. And she was really good. She was like if not the first person, one of the very first people to ever breed discus. And she bred, she had a wet thumb. She could breed anything she could lay her hands on. Her name is Josephine White, and she's the first African-American aquarist of note. Born in 1916, her dad was a farmer. She came from a large family. She was the youngest of 9 kids. She married at 18 and immediately had 4 daughters. Never done fish yet. She's widowed, remarried, had a son, and this is when she got into fish, when she had more time and money. Specifically in the early 1950s, her and her son Walter, this is her, there's no good pictures. I don't think it's just because she's a black woman, but I'm sure that had something to do with it. And this is her son Walter, and he was breeding and showing fish and competing in fish shows in the early 1950s and 60s, and I just find it fascinating that they were able to be successful in this hobby when I'm sure they weren't welcomed with open arms initially, but she was so talented that they had to recognize her talent. She bred angels, she bred discus, she bred barbs, she bred tetras. She was a charter founding member of the American Killie Association in 1961. A black woman. Think about, I'm so proud of her that she was able to be that strong and influence so many people. She died in 1978 at the age of 62. She was the vice president and on the board of the International Betta Congress. She was a fish author, she was a fish judge, and she was, the Duluth Aquarium Society published a booklet of her articles in the early 1960s, and any of you literature collectors, I want that. If you ever see that, think of me. I want that really bad. I think that she is just so fascinating. Not much written about her. Now this is the next lady. If there's any old-time ACA people here, you probably might even remember this woman. She was before my time. I started in ACA, my first one was 1987. I haven't missed one since then, and I never will. I love the ACA, and it's the most fun I have all year. This woman here, her name is Kathy Springer, and she is a founding member of the ACA. She's at the very beginning when it first started, and she was from Los Gatos, California, and she was published in TFH in 1969. She started with Oscars and Angels, but she moved early on in the 60s into Mbuna. When Mbuna were the new thing, they didn't know much about them or how to breed them. She was working with Mbunas early. And this is just a little side note I'll throw in here. I just found this out. Did y'all know that Spock, Leonard Nimoy, was one of the early breeders of African cichlids in the 60s? And he was an advanced hobbyist. I just found that out. I think that's really interesting too, that Spock was breeding in Mbuna back when they first came to the country. I thought that was pretty cool. So, as you may know, the rusty cichlid, Ideotrophis springeri, is named after her. It's a monotypic species. It's one of my favorite in Mbuna. It's kind of orange, purple, real cool. Not that aggressive for an Mbuna. It's named after her. She started keeping fish because her baby daughter kept her up all night, was colicky all the time, and she had to stay up all night with her, and she needed a hobby or something to occupy her time all night long. So she started working with cichlids, and she did African cichlids in Mbuna, and she also, this picture here shows her with a Central American, I believe it's a dovii, looking at her. I love Central, so that picture is really endearing to me. This is the fish that's named after her, the rusty cichlid. I think that's really one of my very favorite Mbuna. I'm not really an African person, but I love that fish. And then this is her in her pond, working out back. She wrote columns for fish newsletters, and this is a pool she had in her backyard. And she had Pseudotrophis elongatus, Trophiops hapbertoni, Petrotilapia trident tiger, Melanochroma species, and these were all outdoors in California. And indoors, she worked with Arata, pseudotrophic zebra, Fulliborni, and Travassae. So she was really quite into her African cichlids, and the old timers in the ACA remember her fondly. Everybody really liked her. She had a sweet, kind, giving, loving personality. So I think that being that she's in the ACA, I love her. So the next one we're going to talk about, this is Libby Young Warren. She's a betta breeder and one of the founders of the International Betta Congress. She started in 1953, and like a lot of these women, the way they started is from their children. Her third grade daughter, Elaine, brought home a pair of guppies from school, and she just took it all from there and kept going. And the thing that this was a husband and wife team, and her department, what she was really good at, the betta breeding is exacting work, and you need extensive record keeping. There's a lot of cleaning. You're working with small broods of fish, and she was very exacting, and she's very good at breeding bettas. And she actually invented, if you use the word, a type of betta called the Libby betta, and they had huge round tails, 3 times the size of the body, and anal and dorsal fins 3 times the body width. And that is what she was known for. And her husband, of course, husband got all the recognition, and she was kind of a sideline as far as these articles go, and it's mostly about him, but she was really the genius behind it all, that did all the record keeping, decided who to breed, and kept it going. So this is some of her fish that I collected out of the aquarium literature. And if you think about it, these fish didn't really exist before that time, and these are bred and created, and she worked a lot to get these type of elaborate finished bettas that we see today and take for granted. And I just think that's fascinating. And they do mention her in the article, which is good, Warren and Libby. Now this next lady, I'm sure, hopefully y'all have heard of her. She's probably, I would say, the most famous in the Americas about fish keeping, Dr. Joanne Norton. She bred fancy live bearers and angels, and she worked on genetics. She was a scientist, and she created many new strains of live bearers. She was a founder of the American Live Bearer Association. She wrote fish books, and she invented a type of swordtail called the imperial swordtail. And it's the first long-finned swordtail, and leave it to a woman to figure this out. His gonopodium was too big to get the job done, and she figured that out and was able to work around that problem. But when you bred these long fins, it also elongated the sex organ, and they weren't able to do it the normal way. So she really had to work to get this breed established, this strain, I should say. This is our fish room, and look at those floors. Man, you could eat off of them. My fish room never looked that good. I find it fascinating to see these old fish rooms, and just think about how challenging the hobby was so long ago, and these people totally devoted their time and life to inventing these new strains of fish. And this is a picture of the strain of swordtail that she managed to come up with. And she wrote books and magazine articles extensively. She worked on TFH, FAMA, the Aquarium magazine, and most of her articles were on different types of fancy live bearers. And she did these little drawings to show what the imperial swordtails were looking like. I just love the old-fashioned art. And then we get into some photography, which, considering this was probably the mid-60s, these are pretty good pictures, I think. And this one is the one, I just love this picture. I mean, that's a beautiful fish. And Dr. Joanne Norton is the one who worked with this, came up with that. Okay, next we're coming to another woman, Thelma Simpson. She also did high fin swords, And she set up a retail store from her own home. She had a commercial breeding operation in Gardena, California. And she developed and sold worldwide the first high-fin swordtails. So I wonder, I bet you her and Dr. Norton were working together, but the swords do look a little different when you look at them. And this is her in her fish room. I love these pictures of women in their fish room, it's so cool. And her swords essentially started the fancy live bearer hobby that we have today. People are really into fancy live bearers, and we can thank her for that, Thelma Simpson. This is the Simpson swordtail, and this is an article about it, calling it the latest new live bearer variety in Southern California. And the earliest photos of her high-fin swordtail picture ever to appear in the literature was in the LA Aquarium Society bulletin, and it was an ad for her high-fin swordtails. This is a picture. I know it's small and not that impressive, but I mean, I just think how exciting this was for her to come up with something like this, and then to be able to get worldwide distribution on her fish like that. I find it fascinating. And so she did all this in the 60s, and her work is the base for countless new strains that we still have today in the hobby. Well, that's a little bit of the history, and now I'd like to talk to you a little bit about now. And now, the Babes in the Cichlid Hobby, that's the organization that Pam Chin, Pam Marsh, and myself started in 1994 at the San Antonio ACA convention in the bar on Sunday night. In 1994, we started this group. And you know, when we started, we really didn't realize what we were getting into and what was going to become, but we knew we wanted to raise money for conservation and research. We wanted to contribute to the conventions in a fun way. And so basically, we decided to do this with unconventional methods. We like to joke that we raised all our money through extortion and blackmail. There's a few other things mixed in there, but we basically charge the fish guys to party with us, and we throw really good parties. So we have raised over $200,000 for conservation and research. And the way we do this, if you're not familiar with the ACA, we have a silent auction for 2 days where people donate fish stuff. It could be jewelry, it could be t-shirts, it could be art, it could be fish food, it could be antique aquarium decorations, it could be anything even tangentially remotely related to fish. And we put it on the table, and then we silent auction it off to the highest bidder. And that is where we have raised the majority of our money, is with the silent auction. And if y'all never run a silent auction, it's a lot of work, and a lot of paperwork, and a lot of time, and sadly stuff gets stolen, so we have to really watch it and stay on top of it, and we essentially can't even do the convention for 2 days because we're married to this table. But it's all worth it because we have such good stuff, and we have so much fun, and we make so much money for the club. All the money goes to the Paul Loisel and the Guy Jordan Fund, and if you're not familiar with those funds, Guy Jordan Fund is for research, and Paul Loisel Fund is for conservation. And essentially, through our hard work, we have filled these funds up with, each one is $100,000, and they give away the interest to people who apply and get grants to research and work with conservation. So every single penny the Babes make goes straight to those funds, and we don't take any for ourselves. We work really hard for conservation and research. So when you come this summer to the Combo Platter Convention, please bring us some stuff to sell, like old fish t-shirts that don't fit you. People love that. Fish art, I mean, anything you can think of. You know, people go shopping and buy like fish plates at Goodwill. I mean, whatever you can come up with, Judy gets a lot for us, brings this whole box of stuff. She goes shopping in Goodwill and Salvation Army and saves up stuff all year round and brings a whole box of like fish salt and pepper shakers or whatever. You know, fish nerds like fish stuff and they'll pay good money for it. So please consider donating. If you come to the convention, bring us some donations. Now this is the other way we raise money. We have a late night, adults only auction, and we sell the rarest, coolest fish for the top dollar, and Fish Boys dirt cheap. You get all the Fish Boys you want to buy. We have a lot of fun with this. We don't start usually till midnight. We give away free booze to get the guys all liquored up so they'll pay more money. We have tequila shots, and we have Fireball, and the guys from Bermuda bring Dark and Stormies. And so we basically, it's a woman-run auction. We recruit all the new women who don't know better. They come in their own runners, and we just get the guys liquored up and sell the best fish and have the most fun doing it. So it's kind of a adults only because I just cut loose and say whatever comes to mind, and I have a pretty dirty mind. So that's why it's late at night, but it's a lot of fun, and I hope that y'all will come to our late night babes auction and check that out. And then one other thing we do, this is not fundraiser, this is purely social, but I want y'all all to know about it so you can do it. Every Sunday night at the ACA, the last night, I organize what's called the Bitches Banquet. If you didn't catch the acronym babes in the cichlid hobby, bitch. We're not ashamed. We like it. It's funny. But some people are offended, and we're not out to offend people, but that's just a name we like and we think it's funny. So we have the bitch the bitch banquet, and we all go to a restaurant together. Everybody left at the ACA on Sunday night, and it's always between 35 and 45 people. I organize it every year, and we always have about the same amount. And I try to pick a local restaurant that is not a chain. That's my criteria. I want some local hometown favorite kind of place. And then we all shuttle over there on the hotel shuttle or somehow arrange to get everybody over there, and we just have the last night together, a fellowship, a camaraderie, and the bitch banquet is some of the most fun that it helps me wind down. I go to ACA for a week, and I just get so excited and so wired up. It's like I'm just speeding all the whole time with this high energy. And this night just brings it all to a close, and everybody can talk and say goodbye for another year. And the bitch banquet is pretty fun time. A couple of things I'd like to mention. In 2001, we made up a award and gave it to Pam Chin. We call it the Ida B. Mellon Lifetime Achievement Award. And we gave that to Pam Chin. That's Pam Chin and Pam Marsh, the other two women that I founded the babes with. Pam Chin on the left is in California, and Pam Marsh on the right is in North Carolina. I'm the Texas one. And Pam Chin, I'm sure y'all know who she is. She's super cool, famous, but she goes to Africa every year with Id Konings, and she takes these incredible videos and slides and writes fish articles. And right now she's off the deep end with Trophius, I think is where she's at. She changes like her whole fish room. She has this incredible fish room. So we gave Pam Chin the Lifetime Achievement Ida Mellon Award for all of her work that she's done for the ACA. And this is us in Africa. We went the year 9/11 happened, and we went in October. And so they hadn't cracked down yet on, like, you couldn't bring stuff in your suitcase like fish and stuff. You could still do that. So when we all came home from Africa, we left all our clothes and shoes and everything and filled our suitcases up with plastic Coke bottles of fish and rocks from Lake Tanganyika and driftwood from Lake Tanganyika and sand from Lake Tanganyika. I'm sure the customs guys thought we were insane. And of course you can't do that now because of 9/11. You can't bring any liquids and stuff like that home. And essentially we were smuggling because, you know, we didn't have permits, but we got away with it, and we had a lot of fun, and we were there with Ad Konings and a whole bunch of fish guys, and it was a life-changing experience for me. The thing is, I had traveled extensively in Mexico and Guatemala, and I thought I had seen third world countries, but you haven't seen nothing like Africa. I mean, they give third world a new definition. Just one little story about that. When we were giving away all our stuff, I had flip-flops, like you get for 99 cents, just flip-flops. And I just gave them to the first guy, the little guy that came by. I didn't want them, gave them to him. Well, the man who was in charge of our cabana, I guess he was our guy, started crying because I did not give those 99-cent flip-flops to him. I mean, he didn't have shoes. And I was just so naive, I just gave them to the wrong guy, and it really made me question American values of, you know, we take so much for granted. We have so much, we live in abundance, and the people over there in Africa really live with so little, but they're cheerful and happy, and we had a wonderful time. They were very good to us, and I have a lot of Africa stories y'all can hear sometime if you get me going, but Africa was a life-changing experience for me for sure. And one more thing just to mention about that, in my fish store, I had a year-long sales contest, and everybody wrote down all their sales. Whoever sold the most in 1 year, I paid his way to Africa, and he went with me. So I had the kind of fish store where my employees were making close to what I was making, and I had, you know, treated them like family, and I hired the best. I was paying $15 an hour in like 1995, 97, in that range. I mean, way above minimum wage. But I had the best people, and I knew it, and I wanted to keep them. And being in a college town, I had a steady stream of new people, but I really wanted to keep my qualified salespeople. And so I paid John Yole's way to Africa, and he went on this trip with us on my dime, and I'm really proud of that. I think that that's one of the best things I did as a store owner. Okay, this is our hero. We all love him, Ad Konings. Y'all all know who he is, and he's really inspirational to us. He's so kind and helpful, and he just takes us under his wing and invites us on his collecting trips, and we've just had so much fun traveling the world around, we've been to different places, Mexico and Africa, and part of the best thing about ACA is making lifelong friends like these people in this picture. Is what I value most in my life is friends and community. And I have that in Austin with my music. I've been in the music scene 45 years. I'm in a band. I have that community, and then I have my fish community. And that is my greatest joy. And I would not have any of this if it wasn't for fish, and I'm really grateful that I have this. And I want you to notice behind him here, this is a quilt made of fish t-shirts. And we sold that at the auction, the silent auction. So we get some really incredible donations. That fish quilt there was a sight to behold. And this is us in Africa. I mean, not Africa, Mexico. This is us in Mexico. And we had a lot of fun. We've been to Mexico a few times together. Being in Texas, they'll kind of come, the girls will come to Austin, and then we'll go down. We can drive from Austin down in there pretty much. Although this time we flew. But I love collecting fish. And I love being in nature and seeing where the habitats of the fish that I love. And I specifically love Mexican cichlids and Guatemala, Costa Rica, all the new Central Americans. That's my jam. So it's fun for me to go there. And this is some of the babes at the convention with Lawrence Kent, and just the most fun you can have. And I highly recommend you all consider going to the ACA convention this year. This is the banquet at the ACA with some of our most favorite fish guys ever. We have Doogie. Man, Doogie. We knew Doogie when he really did look like Doogie Howser. That's why he's called Doogie. In 1987, he looked just like Doogie Howser. Now he doesn't, but. And then we have, obviously, Wayne Leibel. He was our favorite of all time, and we really loved Wayne, and he loved us, and he's just a dear, dear friend, and I'm sure we all miss him. And then you all know Mike Shadle, little troublemaker that he is. He's always in the thick of it. So, just some fish people that I love here. And then this is our t-shirt for our 20th anniversary. Our motto for the babes is excellence through experience. Basically what that's saying is we're old bitches and we know a lot. You better listen. And this is our 20th anniversary t-shirt. And the Bowsonii was our mascot fish that we've always used. This is a funny story here. When we were in Africa, I don't drink, but the other two Pams drink enough to make up for me. And their drink of choice is gin and tonic. And we're in Africa, and Pam Chin planned ahead because she knew there was no lemons in Africa, so she brought lime Kool-Aid. And they made this drink of gin, Tanganyika lake water, and lime Kool-Aid and called it the bitch slap. And that was the drink of choice for the whole time they were in Africa. So that's what that joke is about. Like Tanganyika water does taste really good, I will give it, it's good water. Now this is, y'all know it's coming up. It's not too far from you guys. It's this summer. The combo plate is going to be the Catfish Convention and the ACA Convention all in one big party. And I'm super excited about that. I've never been to the Catfish Convention, even though I've always wanted to go. So I hope to see all of y'all this summer in Madison, Wisconsin, July 13th through the 18th. We usually get there on Tuesday just to have a day or two to kick back and stay until Monday. And it's so fun. So what I'm going to do next is just a little different here. I want to tell y'all about my Facebook group that I moderate. It's called Girls for Fish, and it's a women's fish group on Facebook, but men are welcome to join in. And the story behind it is kind of interesting. I was invited to join. I did not know these women. They heard of me and tracked me down. Nicole is one of the woman who's guest here. She's one of the founding members of this group. And it was founded by this woman right here. Her name is Brittany Cox. She would have been 36 years old this year. Unfortunately, she died in her sleep last year. But she was quite the powerhouse in the tropical fish hobby. And the point I want to make about bringing her up here, she never was in a fish club. She was all Facebook and, online. And on Facebook and online, and the fish clubs online, she felt there was a great divide in the hobby for the women from the men. And you do see online bullying. I'm not saying something y'all don't know about. There are trolls and bullies that delight in picking on people online, and they do exist in fish clubs. So Britt thought that women were steering clear of the fish groups on Facebook because of the fear of men harassing them or making them feel stupid when they asked fish questions. And so she took it upon herself to start a fish club for women. And it's not that the guys can't come in, they just can't be, jerks. They can't be bad. They can't be mean to new people. Women approach the hobby differently than men. It's just, we're nurturing, helpful, kind. We bring the new people in, treat them like family. And the men, especially online fish clubs, are very competitive. And they try to keep secrets from each other, and they don't share their knowledge, and they try to be the best, and they have this big ego wrapped up into their fish hobby that the women don't have. And Britt recognized that and founded this group on Facebook. And I think that her husband told me this, and I believe it. She was determined to change the playing field for women in the tropical fish hobby. This is a woman who died at age 35 and was never in a fish club. They're out there, y'all. We got to find them. We got to go out and find more women and get them into this hobby. Not that you get the guys in too, but the women kind of need some coddling and nurturing and bringing them along with the hobby. And that's what her goal was to start a women's fish group where women were not ridiculed for their lack of knowledge or asking the dumb question, where women were supported and nurtured and allowed to grow and keep whatever kind of fish they like. This is what she liked. And I'll tell you right off the bat, I don't like OB peacocks, but I like her and I like her enthusiasm and joy. I'm not a big lover of that line breeding stuff to get what I view almost as a hybrid, but it's a beautiful fish. I totally get where she's coming from. It's gorgeous. And that's where her interests lie. And she was really an expert at breeding fish, African fish, and every fish you're seeing here is one of hers, out of her fish room. And I just find it amazing that a woman can get so advanced and so into this hobby and never be in a fish club, because I started into fish clubs as soon as I found out about them, and they have really helped me grow and mature as a hobbyist, and I really value the resource of having other people in a loving, kind environment to help me, and that's what the ACA does for me. ACA is not one of those stuck-up, snooty fish clubs as far as I'm concerned. I feel we try to reach out to the new people and be nice to them. Mainly, Britt was talking about online challenges for women, and trolling and bullying is out of control online in a lot of instances. She had a valid point. So this was her stud prize #1 fish. She called this fish Big Red, and she bred a lot of fish from him, and a lot of people still have babies from this fish out there in the hobby. And I just think she did a wonderful job with this. I think it's a beautiful fish, and I really admire her skills. And so Girls for Fish is on Facebook. You're welcome to join. Anybody can join. I will say that it pales into comparison when Britt was the owner of the club. She was a lot more involved. Like, she would every day post something like, "What's your favorite movie? What's your favorite place to eat?" You know, just goofy questions to get people talking and getting to know each other. Me, as running the club, I don't do that. I post lots of cool fish pictures from all different types of fish from all over the world. Try to start conversations about different types of fish. But essentially, it's just a place where women can go and talk to each other and try to learn more about fish. So, in conclusion, women fish keepers are just as into it as the men. We have fish rooms. We can take you to show you our pleasure room. You know, if they think of it as a man's hobby, it's a woman's hobby too. And you never really want to be shortchanging the women in the hobby. You may not know, but there's a lot of us out there. And so my store, more of my crazy signs I put up to fight the massage parlors, exotic mating rituals, and my favorite, fish make me wet. It's Austin, we can get away with this stuff. It was right on the interstate. People still talk about it. They all remember this. You know, so everybody does what they do best, and what I did there was, in my store, was try to teach conservation, try to teach people to breed the fish, try to teach people to keep fish in biotope conditions, get really mad when they mix their Africans and South Americans. I mean, I preached. I had a high horse and I was on it. In fact, I didn't even ever sell parrot cichlids. I'm such a snob. You know, they're huge in the industry. I didn't sell glowfish. I had a line in the sand that I viewed as an ethical line, and I defended it. Now here I am out of business, but, you know, I had my morals and ethics, and I really held tight to them. And I never sold hybrids, and I tried to keep, you know, people would come in and ask for a parrot cichlid, and I said, well, look, this is where it come from. Look at this cool red devil. And I have a big pet red devil that you could reach in and pet his nuchal hump, and he was a real baby. He'd stick his hump out of the water so you could pat on it. And, you know, you try to win people over by showing them what they're passing up when they buy that deformed parrot cichlid. You're passing up this real fish, and you can raise this real fish. And the way I used to bring it down to money is like, some fish grow up and they're worthless, and some fish grow up and they're really valuable. So they come in and ask to buy a little Oscar. You know, I let them buy an Oscar, but I say, but look, why don't you try to keep this cool fish with it, or this cool fish with it, and sell them other fish that I would actually want to see come back to the store. So I think as a store owner, that morals and ethics behind the hobby, trying to educate people, get people on the right path of breeding and conservation, that's where I was always coming from with my store. And in ending, I'd just like to say, let's sow the seeds of love. You know, this hobby is all about, we all share the love of fish. We don't need to compete with each other. We need to support each other. We need to be there for each other. You don't need to ridicule the new people. You need to help them. You need to talk to them. You need to remember what it felt like when you were new. And the computer changed everything in the hobby. And a lot of this, I'm talking about this bullying and stuff, how all started when the computer started. Before that, we had fish clubs in the 80s. There was no bullying in my fish club. I don't know about y'all's, but everybody was good to each other and kind and supportive, and our auctions were loving, fun events. But when you get onto those online forums, there's just a little bit too much testosterone for some girls. So try to reach out to people and get new people in the hobby. That's what I'd like to encourage you to do. And that's about all I have to say. I want to know if anybody has any questions or comments about anything. I can talk to you some more about some of the issues.
Great talk, Carolyn.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.